On an ordinary autumn afternoon in Boston, a young caretaker faced a choice no one ever wants to make. Watch a child's life slip away while waiting for help, or break every rule to save him. What followed was a race against time in a forbidden car, a desperate gamble on the city streets, and a moment that would change lives forever. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video, and tell us where you are watching from. If this story moved you, we'd love to hear your thoughts, so drop a comment below and let us know what you think. Now, let's jump into the story. In the heart of Boston's historic Beacon Hill, narrow streets wound between rows of brick townhouses that had stood for more than a century. Behind one of those doors, a young caretaker named Lena Ward was spending her afternoon with a lively boy named Noah Hale. Noah was just 5 years old, full of questions, energy, and trust. His father, Marcus Hale, a well-known entrepreneur, was often away on business, leaving Lena to be the constant figure in the boy's daily life. She knew his favorite games, the way he liked his sandwiches cut, and the soft lullabies that could calm him when he felt restless. It was a crisp autumn day. Golden leaves drifted past the tall windows, and a faint scent of cinnamon lingered from the cookies they had baked that morning. Noah's laughter filled the room as he built towers of wooden blocks, challenging Lena to guess how high they could go before falling. It was an ordinary, peaceful moment, until it wasn't. Without warning, Noah froze mid-laugh, his small hands reaching toward Lena. His breath came in short, strained bursts, his chest rising and falling far too fast. Within seconds, the color drained from his cheeks, leaving his skin pale. A bluish tint began to creep across his lips. Lena's heart pounded. She called his name, but his gaze was unfocused. Instinct took over. She reached for the house phone on the side table, pressing it to her ear, but the line was filled with static. She tried again. Nothing. She pulled her cell phone from her pocket, but the signal bars were gone, swallowed by the thick brick walls of the old townhouse. Panic clawed at her as she called out for help, her voice echoing down the empty hallways. The silence in response was deafening. The other household staff were somewhere upstairs or in the back garden, too far to hear. Lena looked back at Noah, whose breathing had grown weaker. Every second felt heavier, as though time itself had slowed to match the pounding of her heartbeat. She knew she couldn't wait. Every minute without medical help pushed Noah closer to danger. She grabbed a blanket from the sofa, wrapping it gently around him before lifting him into her arms. His weight felt impossibly light, his head resting against her shoulder. Lena stepped out into the crisp air of the courtyard, searching for anything, anyone that could help. That's when she saw it. Parked near the wrought iron gate was Marcus Hale's metallic blue Aston Martin. The car gleamed in the afternoon light, its polished curves a symbol of wealth and elegance. Lena had admired it from a distance before. It was a strict rule. She was never to go near it, let alone drive it. But rules meant nothing now. Noah's faint breaths were the only sound she could hear. She scanned the street, but there were no taxis, no neighbors in sight. Only the quiet hum of a city momentarily out of reach. She hesitated for a moment, her mind racing. If she took the car, she would almost certainly lose her job, maybe worse. But if she didn't want to finish that thought. Her hands shook as she reached into the hallway table drawer, where Marcus often left his keys. They were there, the small silver key fob cool against her palm. With careful movements, she opened the passenger door and lowered Noah into the leather seat, fastening the belt across his small frame. "Hold on, Noah," she whispered, her voice breaking. "We're going to get you help." She slid into the driver's seat, the unfamiliar luxury of the interior pressing in on her. But there was no time to take it in. The engine roared to life with a single push, and for the first time since the panic began, she felt a flicker of hope. The gate creaked open, and the Aston Martin rolled onto the cobblestone street. Lena gripped the wheel, eyes fixed ahead. The hospital was across the city, and she didn't know if they had enough time. But one thing was certain, she was going to try. The day had begun like any other, filled with small joys and ordinary moments. Now, it had become a race against time, a silent battle between fear and determination. And Lena Ward, a caretaker who had never driven anything more than a small sedan, was about to take the biggest risk of her life. The Aston Martin surged forward, its engine's deep growl echoing through the narrow streets of Beacon Hill. Lena Ward's hands tightened on the wheel, her knuckles pale against the black leather. Noah lay in the passenger seat, his head tilted to one side, eyes half closed, his breaths shallow and uneven. Every glance she stole at him twisted her stomach tighter. The afternoon sun had begun to dip lower, casting long shadows across the cobblestones. Traffic in the city center was already swelling, a maze of brake lights and impatient drivers. Lena didn't care about rules, about traffic signs, or about the cameras that lined the streets. Her only focus was the hospital on the other side of Boston. She pressed harder on the accelerator, the luxury car responding with instant speed. The world blurred at the edges as she threaded through lanes, slipping between delivery vans and family sedans. Horns blared around her, but she didn't slow. Every red light was a barrier she couldn't afford to respect. Her mind worked in sharp bursts. How many minutes had passed? How much farther could she push the car? She glanced at Noah again, her heart thudding at the sight of his pale face. "Stay with me," she murmured, though her voice was swallowed by the rush of wind and engine noise. The GPS on the dashboard flickered, offering a route, but Lena knew Boston's streets well enough to make her own shortcuts. She veered down side roads, avoiding clogged intersections. Pedestrians turned their heads at the sudden flash of metallic blue speeding past, some raising their hands in protest, others simply staring. As she approached the Charles River Bridge, traffic slowed to a crawl. Lena's pulse quickened. This could cost them precious minutes. She scanned the lanes ahead, searching for any gap. Without hesitation, she swung the car into the opposite lane, overtaking the line of vehicles. The blare of a truck's horn followed her, but she was already clear, the city skyline opening ahead. She thought briefly of Marcus Hale, of the consequences that would come with this choice. She imagined the look on his face when he discovered his prized car had been taken, but that image quickly dissolved under the weight of another. Noah's chest, rising and falling, slower and slower. There was no choice to make. A sudden siren wailed behind her. Lena's eyes darted to the mirror, catching the flash of red and blue. A police cruiser was closing the distance. Panic surged through her, but stopping was not an option. She pressed harder, feeling the Aston Martin's engine respond with a deep, urgent roar. The streets narrowed as she entered the hospital district. She wove between taxis and buses, ignoring the angry shouts of drivers she left in her wake. Her hands ached from gripping the wheel, and her breath came in short bursts that matched the rhythm of her racing heart. A final turn brought the hospital into view, St. Clair's emergency entrance, its bright red sign glowing like a beacon. The drive had taken minutes, but it felt like hours. She swung the car into the drop-off zone, tires screeching as they came to a halt. Lena threw open her door and rushed to Noah's side. She unfastened his belt, lifting him gently but quickly into her arms. He was so still now, his head resting against her shoulder. The glass doors slid open with a hiss as she ran inside. "Help! I need help!" her voice carried through the sterile hallway. A team of doctors and nurses rushed toward her, taking Noah from her arms and disappearing behind swinging doors. She stood there, frozen in the middle of the lobby, the sudden stillness pressing against her. The adrenaline that had carried her through the drive began to fade, leaving her shaky and drained. The Aston Martin, still idling outside, drew curious stares from patients and staff. Behind her, the sound of footsteps grew louder. A police officer had followed her in, his expression a mix of concern and authority. He asked her name, his tone calm but firm. Lena gave it without hesitation, her eyes never leaving the doors that hid Noah from view. The officer glanced toward the car outside. "That vehicle, it isn't yours, is it?" he asked. Lena didn't answer right away. The truth was clear, but so was the reason. Somewhere deep inside, she knew this was only the beginning. The drive was over, but the questions, the consequences, and the fate of the little boy she had risked everything for, those were still ahead. The hospital's emergency doors closed behind the medical team, leaving Lena Ward standing alone in the bright, sterile lobby. Her heart still pounded from the drive, and her hands trembled from holding Noah Hale so tightly. She could hear the faint echoes of hurried footsteps and the beeping of machines from somewhere beyond those doors. But she could not see him, could not know if he was safe. The police officer beside her adjusted his notepad. He had followed her from the car, his eyes sharp, but his voice measured. "You drove that Aston Martin here," he said quietly, glancing toward the glass entrance, where the metallic blue car still gleamed in the afternoon light. "Is it yours?" Lena's lips parted, but no words came. She could have explained everything in a single sentence. She could have told him about the failed phone calls, the empty hallways, the gasping breaths of a child who might not survive without help. But the words seemed trapped in her chest. Instead, she nodded slowly. "I drove it. It's not mine." The officer's brows drew together. "Whose is it?" "Marcus Hale," she replied. "I work for him. I take care of his son." She glanced back toward the closed doors. He couldn't breathe. "I didn't have time to wait." The officer's pen scratched across the paper, but his expression softened. Still, procedure was procedure. He radioed in the vehicle's plate number, his voice calm but firm. Across the city, Marcus Hale sat in a glass-walled office on the 21st floor of a downtown tower. He was in the middle of a board meeting when his phone buzzed. The name on the screen belonged to his head of security. "Sir," the voice said without pause, "your Aston Martin has been taken. Boston police just reported it's parked at St. Clair's Hospital. They've detained a woman named Lena Ward." Marcus blinked, confused. "Lena? That can't be right. She's with Noah." Apparently, she drove the car here herself. Marcus's chair scraped against the polished floor as he stood. "I'll be there in 10 minutes. He didn't wait for the meeting to end. The drive to St. Clair's was a blur. When Marcus arrived, he found the Aston Martin exactly as described, parked crookedly near the emergency entrance. Inside, the sight of Lena surrounded by police officers and hospital staff stopped him in his tracks. She looked smaller somehow, her simple cardigan hanging loosely from her shoulders, her hair slightly tangled from the rush. Marcus stepped forward, his voice carrying across the lobby. "Lena." She turned, relief flooding her face. "Noah. He's in there," she said, pointing to the closed doors. "He couldn't breathe. I couldn't get through to anyone. I had to." "Where is he now?" Marcus interrupted, his tone tight. "The doctors are with him." The officer nearest them cleared his throat. "Mr. Hale, she admits to taking your car without permission. Do you wish to press charges?" Marcus looked from the officer to Lena and then to the emergency room doors. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, as if making a decision that surprised even himself, he shook his head. No, absolutely not. Relief washed over Lena, but Marcus wasn't finished. If she hadn't taken that car, my son might not be alive right now. His voice was firm, carrying to everyone in the lobby. She did the right thing. As if on cue, the doors to the emergency room opened. A doctor stepped out, removing his gloves. "Mr. Hale, your son is stable. It was a severe allergic reaction, but he's responding to treatment. He's asking for Lena." Lena's breath caught. The doctor gestured for her to follow, and she disappeared through the doors without hesitation. Dot, dot, dot. Marcus watched her go, his mind replaying the words, "She did the right thing." For years, he had surrounded himself with people who followed rules without question. Now, in a single afternoon, someone had broken every rule for the sake of his son's life. In the waiting area, whispers spread quickly. Some spoke about the stolen car, others about the billionaire who refused to press charges. But the story was already changing shape, becoming something larger than an impulsive act. It was turning into a story about loyalty, courage, and the moments that reveal who we truly are. Marcus sat down at last, leaning forward with his hands clasped. He had seen many people make sacrifices in the business world, but this was different. This was personal. And it was only the beginning of what he knew he needed to do next. The hospital room was quiet, except for the steady beep of the heart monitor. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting thin stripes of light across Noah Hale's B. Lena Ward sat beside him, her hands resting gently on the blanket. Noah's breathing was slow but steady now, the frightening gasps from earlier replaced by soft, even breaths. His small hand curled around her fingers, and she felt the tension in her chest ease for the first time since that terrible afternoon began. Marcus Hale stood in the doorway, watching them. For a man used to making decisions worth millions in a single phone call, he felt oddly uncertain about what to say. His son was alive because Lena had acted without hesitation. She had broken a rule that mattered to him, but she had done it to protect what mattered most. "He's going to be fine," Marcus said at last, stepping inside. Lena looked up, relief in her eyes. "The doctors said it was an allergic reaction," she replied quietly. "They think it might have been something in the cookies we made earlier. I didn't even know." Her voice trailed off. Heavy with guilt, Marcus shook his head. "Don't blame yourself. You saved him. Without you, we'd be having a very different conversation right now." A knock sounded at the door, and the same police officer from the lobby entered. "Mr. Hale," he began, "I need to close out the report. Just to confirm, you're not pressing charges?" Marcus glanced at Lena, then back to the officer. "No charges. She didn't steal my car. She borrowed it to save my son. That's not a crime in my book." The officer nodded and quietly left, leaving the three of them alone. Marcus pulled a chair beside Lena. "I've been thinking," he said, leaning forward. "I've built companies, investments, projects all over the world, but today made me realize something. I've never built anything to help people in moments like this. Emergencies don't wait for permission, and most people don't have the resources to act quickly." Lena listened as he continued. "I want to start a community health fund, something that can help families when a child's life is at risk and time is cry. No forms, no long approvals, just immediate help." Her eyes widened slightly. "That could save a lot of lives." "It will," Marcus said firmly, "and I want you to help me run it, officially. No longer just as Noah's caretaker, but as my personal assistant. You know what's important. You know how to make things happen when it matters." Lena blinked, caught off guard. "Me? I don't have the kind of experience for something like that. You have exactly the kind of experience. Marcus replied, you understand urgency, compassion, and how to keep calm under pressure. The rest you can learn. For a moment, Lena looked down at Noah's sleeping face. She thought about the fear in the townhouse, the sound of the Aston Martin's engine as she sped through the streets, the relief when they reached the hospital. Maybe this was more than just a terrifying day. It was the beginning of something larger. News of the incident spread quickly beyond the hospital walls. By evening, headlines were appearing online. Caretaker drives billionaire's car to save his son, and risking it all. Woman's fast decision saves child's life. Social media filled with comments praising her courage, debating the rules she had broken, and sharing personal stories of times when they had acted without thinking to protect someone they loved. In the days that followed, the story became more than a local headline. It was shared on national news programs, discussed on talk shows, and reposted across countless feeds. What began as a desperate act in a quiet townhouse had become a reminder that love and courage often move faster than fear or hesitation. Weeks later, the newly created Hale Emergency Care Fund held its first meeting. Lena sat beside Marcus at the long conference table, still adjusting to her new role. She spoke softly but clearly as they reviewed their first cases, families who had been given immediate help in their own emergencies. Sit. After the meeting, Marcus thanked her again. You started this, he said. You didn't just save Noah. You started something that's going to save hundreds of others. Lena smiled faintly. I just did what anyone would have done. Marcus shook his head. No, not everyone would. That's why it matters. As they left the building, the late afternoon sun glinted off the city skyline. Noah was waiting at home, healthy and smiling, ready to show Lena the new puzzle he'd been working on. Life had returned to its gentle rhythms, but something fundamental had changed. Lena Ward was no longer just a caretaker. She was a protector, a decision-maker, and now a part of something that would outlast them all. The day that had begun with fear had ended with hope, and in between, it had proven one simple truth. Sometimes the fastest road to saving a life is the one no one expects you to take.